Okay. Good morning, everyone, and happy to be with you. It's been a kind of a tumultuous time for me with leaky roofs and replaced water heaters and people getting ill. And so my talk was rescheduled a number of times through my own necessity. Um, so I'm happy to come in for a landing and be here now. My talk today, in a way, is definitely a talk. It's also, in another way, sort of an outline of some different angles that occurred to me, looking at one aspect of um, the dreaded Five Ranks of Tozan, and partially inspired by my reaction to some parts of Tim's talk the other day. And but what I was left with was this idea of the absolute or Buddha nature being expressed through the relative or the present moment in various ways. So the absolute or Buddha nature shows itself or comes through what we call the relative, the particular moment, the particularity of the present self and the present situation, which is always changing, but is always here in one form or another, at least while we're alive. Now, these examples come at this idea from different angles or examine different aspects of it, and hopefully they'll all come together or point to this reality in different ways, and hang together in their intent. But they may look at it from different angles, examine different aspects of it. And then at the end, I'd like to take a look at one aspect that seems really interesting to me of the absolute in the relative through an exercise that we can engage with. So once upon a time, the world-honored one, the Buddha, was walking with gods and devas and humans. You can cross out the gods and devas if you don't believe in that kind of thing. You could be walking with humans. When he paused, he pointed to the ground and said, "This is a suitable site to build a temple." The god Indra then plucked a blade of grass from nearby and stuck it into the ground at the spot where the Buddha had pointed. Indra declared, "The temple is built." The world-honored one smiled. And that's from the Book of Serenity, Case 4. So in a certain way, that is the absolute in the relative. If you make a single real gesture in this relative world of change, you have already accomplished the karma of your action. And you have in essence accomplished the action. The essence of action, the essence of karma, the essence of individual existence is a kind of responsive awareness to situations and conditions that leads to our involvement in the world. That responsive awareness or intention represents the absolute. It's our sentient nature responding to what is, the relative, as the present at any given moment. So a Hasidic master, thank you, was once having, it's almost as difficult to pronounce Hebrew as it is to pronounce Chinese, which I also attempt at times, even though I don't speak either. I did speak a little Hebrew for a short period of time when I was preparing for my bar mitzvah, but I don't really remember it. So a Hasidic master was having a very hard time giving a talk in the temple. There was a kind of heavy feeling in the air, and he almost felt like he was going unconscious and couldn't continue. Something seemed to be trying to stop him from speaking. There was a young boy in the congregation there who always had trouble controlling himself, and his parents were busy trying to keep him from uh, having an outburst. But he suddenly blew his toy whistle very loudly, stopping the proceedings and astonishing the rabbi and the congregation. After that, the rabbi was able to complete his talk much more easily and without any problem. After the talk, the family apologized copiously for this terrible interruption, which was so embarrassing to them. But the rabbi smiled and said, actually, the boy helped me and allowed me to finish the talk. This shows how the basic primal force of our being can presence itself in an outward action, and how a spontaneous, true action can suddenly express and facilitate the truth of our nature, the absolute. The action takes place in the relative world of change, but it expresses the truth or the energy of our deeper nature. Every experience expresses the absolute because our nature as sentient beings is always expressing itself in whatever form it is at the moment, but it may be made more obvious or have more of a direct effect through what you could call a true gesture. On another occasion, again in the temple, a very devout young man was praying loudly in the temple, kind of distracting everyone in his prayers, calling out to God, beating his chest, and making a big show of how fervent he was in his devotion. In this case, the rabbi came over to him and said, "My son, have you ever noticed the difference between a wick of cotton and a wick of flax? One burns quietly while the other one sputters. Believe me," he said, and this is one of my favorite lines that I've remembered for many years from the Hasidic masters as recorded by Martin Buber. Believe me, he said, a single true gesture, even if it is of the little toe, is enough. So in one case, you could say that the noise was the true gesture, which, by the way, everyone was trying to suppress. And in the other case, the noise was a distraction and the silence was the true gesture. Because in that case, this particular person was trying to show how aligned they were with the absolute and attempting to demonstrate it rather than really expressing it. A single true gesture expresses our truth, whether it is loud or soft, and that is the absolute in the relative. In the Carlos Castaneda books, just to switch venues, which record the teachings that he experienced as a student of a Mexican shaman he called Don Juan, during his long shamanic training, Castaneda learns to perceive and work with the enormous power of what is called the Nahual in that tradition, Nagual, which is the shamanic equivalent of the absolute or Buddha nature. It's the impersonal force behind our individual existence, beyond the personality and its particularity. At the very end of the series, Don Juan the shaman surprises Castaneda by reversing the order of importance of what he's teaching and stating that the Nahual, which he spent so many years trying to contact and access and understand this great mystery of the Tao or Buddha nature, the Nahual, the universal force, by stating that the real mystery of the universe was not the Nahual, the absolute, which sort of comes with the territory as a universal presence, but the tonal, the individual self. And that it was actually much more mysterious how our individual existences come into manifestation and what their nature is. How is it possible in the absolute reality for these relative selves and the relative world of changing objects to exist? The mystery of our individual existence and how it reflects the mystery of the absolute is, again, the absolute and relative. We may spend a lot of time trying to understand our deeper nature and what our impersonal Buddha nature really is and trying to experience that. But it's actually a great mystery and worthy of investigation how we exist as individual beings in the relative. In Zen koans, there is also the appearance of the relative as the absolute, and it sometimes seems to divide Zen into two different aspects and reflects Buddha's two truths, the absolute and the relative again, and how they express. There's a very kind of empirical, on the ground Zen of, doing everything with a kind of precision and awareness that allows us to be very skillful in the world of change, in this relative world. And then there are other aspects of Zen and some of the Zen koans that seem to represent the absolute expressing itself as the absolute. So Joshu offers two famous koans, among others. When asked how to practice, he famously said, if you've eaten your rice, wash your bowls. And sometimes Zen is very much associated with this kind of completion of actions, being attentive to the moment and dealing with what's happening right now. And completing your action. It makes the absolute or awakening seem like a very particular sort of affair tied to what's happening right now. That again is seeing the absolute in or as the relative, the specific reality of the moment. Joshu also offers the Mu koan, which has become the basis of much koan practice, sort of the foundation. And Mu seems to be the absolute coming from the absolute, leaving aside the puppy who brought up the case in the first place by having or not having Buddha nature, and settling into the very nature of our existence as conscious beings and experiencing that more directly. But really, maybe they're both pointing at the same reality, which is the realization of who we are in the moment. In one Christian prayer that's very famous, we see the relative and the absolute invoked as part of that same continuum. Give us this day our daily bread, and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Dear Lord, show us the absolute in the relative. Daily bread is like rice and bowls. Thy will be done as it is in heaven is closer to Mu. So what if the rice bowl, the relative, the bread is exactly the expression and presence of the absolute, the deeper root of existence or Buddha nature, right here, right now? That takes us back to Castaneda and the mystery of the tonal, the personal self, as the expression of the Nahua, the absolute power that is the force of the universe, like the Tao or the Dharma when it is used in that sense, or Buddha nature. What is it about this particular moment in our particular selves that is the expression of Buddha nature, the absolute? Well, for one thing, none of this could take place or be experienced without our conscious aware being, our conscious aware sentient quality. That quality happens to be expressed for us humans at this moment, and then the next, and then the next, as we are mindful and active in the world of change, samsara. And yet the reality of this conscious presence is always there for every experience. There's a danger of saying that this nature doesn't change because it makes it seem like a kind of static substrate, and then many traditions fall into that trap, something that's hanging around dead in a way, like a separate object that's somehow separate and apart from our momentary expression and existence. In fact, this aware quality is always present in the presence of this or that changing phenomenon. But we can focus on the changing reality or the fact that we're aware of it, and that changes our focus from the relative to the absolute, or the absolute in the relative. I'd like to end my sketch with another quote and an exercise that we can do and possibly discuss. From the singer-songwriter Laurie Anderson. She has an amazing line to me in one of her songs where she says that when her father died, it was as if an entire library had burnt down. That is the loss of the tonal, the contents of an entire life as a self, all that has been experienced and saved in the individual mind. Like a Tibetan sand painting, at the end of life, it's all dissolved in the river of time and change. And yet the causes one has put into place continue to influence the flow of the stream in this relative existence. Our past experience, while we're still alive, becomes like a dream that is stored in the mind. While we shouldn't be captured by what we think happened to us in the past and the identity that that appears to give us, on the other hand, the mind contains this amazing library of experience and understanding taken from the relative, our individual life of change in the world of change, while all the while reflecting the absolute reality of experience. So I'd like to engage you and myself with this question. Rather than wiping away all the content of our experience, to ask what is contained in your library that is of true value to you? What kind of collection do you have or represent? What is the legacy of your experience, the causes that you have put in motion in the world of change, your individual contribution that you feel may stick around in some way and influence the stream? So this is the mystery and the reality and the value of the tonal, the relative, the individual self, and the individual experience. I would like to propose that we sit with that idea for a few minutes and take a little inventory of the life experience and content of our individual library and what is stored in our mind in that sense. And then maybe we can discuss what we see in our little storehouse, our own storehouse of experience, and what we think about this relative existence and how it reflects the absolute, the presence we have as conscious beings, and at the same time has its own particularity. Like each blade of grass is made of the same green grass, but each has its individual existence for a period of time. So I'll give us 5 minutes and then we can see if anybody would like to share about that or about the general theme of the absolute expressing itself through the relative. Okay, folks, so we are back and just reflecting on the amazing ability of our human minds to contain these two aspects of reality, the absolute presence that is here as sentient beings in every moment. And at the same time, we have this amazing ability to record and save and collect this timeline of past events that don't exist anymore in the present moment as current realities, but that represent this whole amazing journey of experience, both in its own right and towards the awareness of the absolute. So I wonder if anybody wanted to share something about their own individual library, what's recorded in their mind as their journey of experience, what they think is there that is, in a sense, we are just beings, we're just present, but we also have this legacy, this library of experience that no one else has. And also the general idea of the absolute expressing itself through the relative at every moment.